Greetings, my beloved. Welcome to Natural Law Frontiers. Is there uncharted territory in this timeless philosophy? Thank you so much for inviting me back. Last year, the Sonic Divorce, it was a call for a musical revival. The call was answered with the Soundpath Music Festival. I'm going to push my luck this year and attempt to do something similar this time. Okay, my name is Konrad Rogoz. Thanks for being here. It's a talk that I'm giving because I feel like I view the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference to be a cultural gathering of a young, developing movement. I don't think our job is done at all, not even close. It's taking shape and it's experiencing it together. I think we're really in the childhood stage, the early childhood of our movement. Of course, it is open and public, so I'd love the whole world to see this presentation, but this is an event, I think, for and by each other, and that's the way I see it, that's the way I'm approaching it. The modern natural law movement, which to me describes the 21st century moral philosophy basically as it was presented by Mark Passio through his podcasts and through his presentations. I'm calling that the modern natural law movement, right? That's one of my first points, is we should be clearly self-defined. It would help us to be, so that history knows who we are years and years to come and what philosophy we represented. It's a tricky thing to do in today's environment. Now, that's one way to define us, right? Now, one of our qualities is, as the modern natural law movement, is that we are recruiters. We just are. We not only publish works talking about what is, we are trying to convince others of our philosophy. So we're also including that motivating and persuasion factor in order to get other people to publish their works, to convince others. So there's an extra step here. Moral philosophies, generally, they don't include the crusade. After all, only extremists crusade, right? And I say that jokingly, of course, because I am a proud crusader and have been for several years when it comes to this philosophy. I just want to recognize that this makes us unique and different as a community from other schools of philosophy. Like, we're not going to wait 200 years and watch our children grow up in slavery and then hope somebody's going to read our books one day, right? Like the Greek philosophers. We're not just going to leave it there. And rightfully so. We don't just stick to the academic field. We go out into the actual field of play and try to change people's behavior and not just tell them how what their behavior is going to do. But the negative with that is that we are not respected like the other philosophies. We're just not. This is another one of my points, that the natural law, the modern natural law movement, should target the philosophy niche. We need to be respected like one of the other philosophies that don't have the religious baggage. See, religions are respected. Their adherents get a pass for being crusaders. It's okay to be a crusader, to be a missionary, to be evangelical. Political parties, they get respected too. Their adherents get a pass for being for their emotionality, for their logical fallacies, for their wild, attacks. We don't get any of those passes. We need to hold ourselves to a high academic and even scientific standard, like sound logic, downright mathematical standards. And yes, there's room within that movement for passionate music, expression that is loud and unusual. I've done that, right? And that should run parallel with the philosophical principles. I'm focusing on the philosophical principles this time. Our philosophy has to be rock solid and sharp. And it is the realm of philosophy that should be the core target. One of the biggest criticisms I get about what I do is, who is your target audience? That's what people say to me. Who are you doing this at? Who is your target audience? They may not think this is a criticism, but it's actually been one of the more painful things I've heard doing this stuff. Well, this one, my target audience, just making it very clear, it's for the inner circle, people like myself. So as I get more into it, if you think that I'm calling you out, I'm not. I am calling you out. I'm calling myself out too. This is for the inner circle. The saying goes that those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. Well, the way I see it, these are like stone showers that we're just experiencing together. The stone showers are coming down on all of us. And I don't think any of us live in glass houses. So we should be just fine, right? Everybody here is a thick-skinned individual. This is just me pointing into the mirror and saying, get as offended as you like. Okay, enough introduction. So I'm going to make it sound like I'm reinventing the wheel, and I'm really not. But it's not a phrase that is used too often. This is about the need for the next Mark Passio. Not in style, not in charisma, not in skill, but in content. Philosophically significant, fresh work that is going to spawn a new wave of this movement. That's when the natural law tradition is going to make a difference in the world. When you can trace its history and its leaders, its leading figures it will look like an ancestry tree with a branch here and a branch there and an offshoot there. Generations of different variations of the same seed, an actual network of influence, right? New patriarchs and new matriarchs that refresh the core philosophy. I'm speaking proverbially, of course. Influencing the philosophy of the future thinkers. If there's no family tree, if we don't have other superstars, other leaders, if there's no family tree, then there's no family. It's just one person, and his students, right? But what if there was never an Aristotle after Plato? What if there was in Greek philosophy no Pythagoras, no Archimedes, none of this, just the original, just the originator of knowledge? Well, this is the Buckminster Fuller quote that I think a lot of us have heard before. You never change anything by fighting it. You change things by making them obsolete through superior technology. And the way I'm applying that in this field, in this case, is that the superior technology that I'm talking about is the realm of philosophy, the realm of ideas, logical structures. Yeah, natural law is eternal and unchangeable, but this philosophy, this philosophical movement is not done. It has not all been discovered. So the call for me is like, please don't make the mistake of being a wayseer, seeing yourself as a wayseer and a guide in a forest that we don't fully know yet. We haven't explored every nook and cranny of it. Now, I was putting this together before giving this talk, and someone might contact me and say, hey Konrad, exactly what you're saying has already been done. I'm doing this, here's my work, here's someone else's work, don't you feel stupid now? Well, maybe I'll feel a little bit stupid, right? But I'll only be better off for it. And at the end of the day, we're all going to be better off if we push for the natural law frontiers. Which are what? Okay, here's some examples. We all know about the 7 violations of natural law. Murder, rape, theft, assault, trespass, coercion, deception. They can be and have been nitpicked, right? Some are easier to nitpick than others as far as criticism of our philosophy. Now, murder, rape, and assault, for the most part, you're not going to get any arguments on, right? That's pretty cut and dry. But I think specifically deception, the ins and outs of lying, I think that's like the deep ocean, man. We know generally what's in the ocean. We can tell you with good certainty what lives there and how, but only a small percentage of the entire ocean has been discovered and looked at. And we, to this day, discover new deep-sea creatures and new behaviors are being discovered by what the creatures are doing that was not previously known. So with deception, I think we all know that, for example, us being lied to about the contents of fluoride and other toxins in the water, chemicals in the food and water, lying about that, deception about that is a violation of natural law. I think we all agree. But what if you lied to me about how good my presentation is, right? Or you lied to your partner about how good they look in something. So what if you told me that it was an 8 out of 10 and that you liked it, but not as much as you said? Maybe you actually liked it a 6 out of 10. Like, that's not a violation of natural law. I think we all understand that. So it's safe to say we all know this, but as far as making informed decisions, what do we have a right to know? What is that right to know? There's so much to talk about here. Can we articulate it? We can say that generally, a principle can be true enough, and it's not about nitpicking. It's not about complicated, very intricate situations. It is about a general, common sense application of a principle. But why say that these rules are true enough? We can invoke common sense. We can say this has malicious intent, this doesn't. We can take all of it into consideration, but I don't think we need to. I think the application of natural law can be flawless and unambiguous. It just needs to be tested and explored further. This is a significant area that I'm working on in my own material, which is nowhere near done, but I wanted to take this opportunity, for which I am so grateful, at Freedom Under Natural Law 5, Ignite, and I don't think we have enough time to wait. So first is more work on the specific technical application of the 7 natural law violations, deception in particular. That's example 1. Example 2, hey, how do we deal with child predators and the material they produce? I know it's a sensitive, serious topic. I know we're on YouTube, so I won't drag us into all the details of that. Don't have time anyway. But I think one of us should have tackled it in detail by now. Like, say we're in an anarchic society today under natural law, and they put one of us at the wheel. Here's all the internet with all of its material, all of its stuff, and man's law just collapses, right? What do you do? What do we do? What do we restrict? How do we restrict it? And can we articulate according to what principle we're restricting what? I wouldn't want that job, but on top of that, there's the question of, say you find certain images or videos on somebody's computer that are showing children get hurt. Can you treat that person as if he committed that crime, as if he hurt someone? Can someone be punished for an act they didn't commit yet? Right? In any other context, I think we would say no. We would say there's no such thing as pre-crime. I agree with that. But what if there was a 90% statistical chance that they would hurt a child? I'm not saying that's what the statistic is, but it's close. But what if it was 100? And I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just saying these are unanswered questions in our field. Natural law frontiers, hence the name. The issue I just want to kind of settle back in on. The issue I'm pointing to is that the natural law philosophy is not generating great philosophers today, prolific, original thinkers. Part of it is the world is collapsing, right? So it's a tough, tough job that we got. Society has gone mad. People are absolutely insane. But still, let's hold ourselves to a high standard of sanity. Let's just recognize that regardless of the reasons for why, it is true that too often we get stuck in trying to convince others. We try to be the salesman, the solicitor, the motivator, right? We go out and preach the gospel like Jehovah's Witnesses. We knock on the door. I've done it as well. I continue to do it. But it's a difficult thing that we get stuck in. And the second thing is, if we're not doing that, then I think we get stuck talking to each other as well. Our own little community. So when you're not preaching the gospel, when you're in the church, you've got the congregation. The congregation gets together. Everybody comes together. Everybody knows each other at church, and they're there at church talking to everybody. Understands each other. They all have a common language. The congregationalist socialite, right? And that list could be longer if we thought about it, but it's not to do that. I'd just rather quickly point to some of the factors for this, right? One is the social media era. We're living in it. This is tough. It's way more difficult to be a philosophical thinker today that gets any sort of attention in the current climate. The algorithm is against us. The speed ratio itself between human information and the information that humans have to take in and human processing speed, that ratio is off. We can't keep up. Or in street terms, what has happened is our society, in terms of intelligence, in terms of morality, of compassion, society in 26 is like crack babies. We're living in a crack baby era where we have no shot. Not literally, but we definitely have it stacked against us, the odds. Or fetal alcohol syndrome, right? Where we might make it through grade school, but it's no wonder that we're not spawning any great leaders. We're kind of damaged, right? And there's an aspect to this we can't control. It is what it is. That's the cards we're dealt. But this next factor we can control. And it's the tendency to approach natural law as a completed work. That it's done. Remember, only religions have a completed work. Only religions have a perfect finished work that never gets added onto. Sciences only have like a diary of work. It's just a log of things that have been discovered, that have been learned. The scientists recognize that it needs continuous additions. But it's tricky because natural law is as fundamental as it gets. It's as primordial as it gets with philosophy. Don't initiate harm to others. All other behaviors are unalienable individual rights. What else needs to be said? I think there's a tendency in our movement to put a period on that, right? I've certainly felt that way at times. But I'm coming here today to call for us to treat that philosophy itself as an unfinished work. Not just the great work to spread it to people, but the philosophy itself as an unfinished work. See, not just the right action, the rhetoric, the rhetor action, right, of ending slavery, harm and abuse on earth, but our grammar and logic as well. There's no relativism to what I'm saying, nor is there any revisionism, nor will any true statements become untrue. But there is unfinished business. Definitely. There is a different story to be told. It might have the same ending as the other story, but there is a lot more to a story than just the plot. So, at the cost of being called crazy or pinning our name to an idea that doesn't pan out, we might be disproven in the future, I say let's go for that. Let's go for that and give it a try. Maybe the natural law community can gift the world the next Buckminster Fuller, the next John Nash, or Nikola Tesla, or Ignaz Semmelweis, right? Semmelweis is not that well known, and I'm going to dive into him quickly because his life makes a point. I want to try something new, give you something new here with this opportunity I have. So a short inquiry into Semmelweis is perfect to close this short presentation. This guy was a Hungarian doctor from the mid-1800s. At 26 years old, he takes an internship at a maternity clinic at Vienna Hospital. 2 years later, he gets hired as a doctor's assistant right after his internship, and there are 2 maternity clinics there. At both of them, moms are dying after giving birth with what was called childbed fever. One of them has a death rate of 10%, and one of them has a death rate of 4%. And at 29 years old, as he analyzes it, he investigates, he looks at the causal factors, analyzing it, the differences. At 29 years old, he figures out that at one of the clinics, the nurses were also doing autopsies before touching the moms. So it was the contact with the corpses that was the cause. Remember, this is the mid-1800s, right? So, since this is before germ theory, right? This is still the 4 temperaments theory that they're operating under. Now, since chlorine was known to make the smell of decomposing flesh go away, this guy, Semmelweis, he proposes that the medical staff, they wash their hands with chlorinated lime. And you can look at the results. It is a chart where the death rate just plummets, right? It goes down. At one point, it went down to 0. And chlorinated lime is not even an ideal hygienic treatment, right? But still incredible results. So you would think that the doctors and nurses of the world would adjust to this groundbreaking discovery, right? And Semmelweis would live a long, peaceful life where he would be seen as a hero and an innovator. And that is not what happened, of course, right? And I'll read an excerpt from an excerpt on his life. But, you think about the discovery of the science of natural law, how it should in itself change things, but as was in the case of Semmelweis, it didn't. It required more, and there are some of the reasons for that I want to end with. So, hesitant publication of results, right? His results. Towards the end of 1847, Semmelweis and his students, they wrote letters to the directors of all the different maternity clinics, showing them what they found, discussing their observations. And accounts of the dramatic reduction in mortality rates in Vienna, they were being circulated throughout Europe. Semmelweis, of course, had reason to expect that his chlorine washings would be widely adopted, saving tens of thousands of lives. But early responses to his work also gave clear signs of coming trouble. Some physicians had clearly misinterpreted his claims, and additionally, initial responses to Semmelweis' findings, they tended to downplay their significance by arguing that he has said nothing new. We've heard that before. Actually, there was a man called Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. in America who had actually years before tackled childbed fever. And he also found the same link that as Semmelweis, that the doctors were passing the disease to their moms, to the moms that they were treating. Except Holmes in America, he emphasized the contagious nature of it as an infectious, what we have today. It sounds like the same thing as Semmelweis, but it really isn't, because in fact, Semmelweis was warning against all decaying organic matter, not just a specific contagion that originated from the victims of childbed fever, but all decaying organic matter was the causal factor. This misunderstanding and others like it occurred partly because Semmelweis' work was only known through secondhand reports written by his colleagues and students. His students spoke for him, and at this crucial stage, Semmelweis himself had published nothing. These and similar misinterpretations continued to cloud discussions of his work throughout the century. So, the danger of not publishing your own work, we know that, right? Now, years later, Louis Pasteur, he would come around with the germ theory of disease, and it turned out that Semmelweis was right all along. Today, we know that, right? Actually, the modern medical establishment, they took Semmelweis's life work and they built their empire on his grave, figuratively and literally, because the more he tried to get through to the medical community, right? He was a crusader. He called them idiots. The more he alienated them, called them murderers, right? Understandably. But at 47 years old, he got lured into a mental institution, right? Without his knowledge. And once he was in there and tried to leave, he got beaten by the guards and died 2 weeks later from an infection. Ironically, the cause of death officially was listed as pyemia, which is blood poisoning. Which is what? A lack of cleanliness and sanitation. The same ancient adversary that killed those women at that maternity clinic. That's his fate. And this is the fate that we face today as leaders in the modern natural law movement. I want to learn from it to make sure that it doesn't repeat, right? Other than the umbrella term misunderstood, why wasn't Semmelweis heard at the time? The first thing, quote, he had said nothing new. I would say that this is the most frequent criticism of Mark Passio. And we largely just repeat what he says, so imagine how much it applies to us, right? He has said nothing new. But also, this is because the natural law movement, the modern one, faces the same kind of resistance that he did. A unified, powerful resistance, treating people, ignoring them, ridiculing them, but ultimately treating them as they're mentally ill, which is what kind of a resistance? Religious resistance. See, he challenged the entire profession and tradition by calling attention to the fact that, to the principle that health problems can be traced to a single universal principle, which in this case is cleanliness. Not mystical supernatural particles, right? Agents of evil and decay, but decaying organic matter itself. When life goes bad, right? The religions of medicine, of scientism, of statism, if you challenge those, like we are challenging those, be prepared for a dirty fight. Some of us learned that, and all of us maybe will learn that one day, right? Or have learned it. The modern natural law movement does the same thing. We call upon universal principles as well. Now, what is the response we get? He had said nothing new. That's one of the criticisms. The other is that his work of Semmelweis, it was known through his students, through secondhand reports. Remember, at that crucial stage, he had published nothing. Well, for that one, our teacher prepared us well, right? I don't think any of us, very few members of this community, could be accused of not publishing. But there's a lesson here to be learned as well about controlling the narrative. Very big part of what I'm talking about here. We need to tell our story, not our teacher's story, not students distorting the teacher's work, nor the student's own work being distorted by being identical to the teacher's, right? How do we control our own narrative? How do we keep that ancestry and genealogy philosophically? How do we keep it going? I think a good start is to set out to become associated with a distinct and memorable concept, something that people are going to remember. Louis Pasteur, germ theory. Thomas Paine, common sense. Mark Passio, the science of natural law, right? Konrad Rogoz, I already know what it's going to be. I just haven't published it yet. So put your name there. What about yours? How can we present this in a way that's going to strike people as a new thing? Of course, there's nothing new under the sun, but we need new systems to replace the obsolete systems. I can't stress enough this point, which you know already. We are up against a religion, the belief in societal institutions, the social contract, the relativism, the primitive human behaviors, collectivism, rule by force, obedience. These are all part of a religious devotion. Society has a religious devotion to these outdated concepts. And a religion will not be defeated, will not be weakened through religious-like means. We're not going to win that war. Preaching, doctrine, conversion, congregation. But, how does a religion lose their influence? Well, how about having another place to go on Sunday? Literally, or Shabbat, right, or Friday, you know what I mean. Maybe a library, maybe a town square. It's a metaphor that I'm going with, but I'm calling for the pursuit of natural law frontiers in order to attract people through our originality and our innovation and get them to peek inside those doors as opposed to shouting them down and calling them over, right? Instead of straining to fill the lecture halls putting in more effort with the lights down to advance the core philosophy before the big lights come on. That is my call today. Thank you for listening to me today. I've managed to do it. I was rushing a bit. I got my 30 minutes. Plenty of other great speakers, I'm sure, that I'm looking forward to watching back together with you. Thank you for listening to me today and allowing me to share this spirit of philosophy and innovation that I've had on my mind here, as we start 2026. I published my first video in 2022. It was a presentation called Dependence on Systems of Control. It was the same year as the first Freedom Under Natural Law conference, right? My salute to you all, In 2020, I was on the edge of life and death, literally. I was right there. I just turned 30 this month. My longtime friend actually, he messaged me saying he's so happy to be able to see me live to turn 30. Natural law has helped me rebuild my entire life, truly, genuinely, and I came into this community, 2021, 2022, thinking in my mind, warrior. I'm here to be a warrior. I'm here with my sword. I'm ready to go. But now as we head into the second half of this decade, I'm realizing that I'm going to be more useful to this movement by just being who I have been my whole life. Which is thinker. This is a call to awaken the thinkers, to reawaken and reignite. And I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much. Much love to you all, and natural law forever.